such long legs that
That makes a difference.
The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Reading is definitely an issue of interest to librarians, teachers, parents, all adults concerned with children's welfare. Our guest today, Lieutenant Governor Marlene Johnson, has long advocated the importance of reading with and to children. She has initiated Project Bookshelf, a program bringing civic volunteers and local organizations together to collect new books which will be distributed to children across the state during the holiday program. Lieutenant Governor Johnson will be talking about Project Bookshelf and also about some of the other child advocacy issues she's involved in. Lieutenant Governor, we're delighted to have you with us today on All About Kids.
Thank you. It's really good to be here.
Thank you. And we're going to be talking about something that, to me as a children's librarian, is very near and dear to my heart. Mm-hmm. Your interest in children's access to books, your commitment to seeing that children across Minnesota, particularly those who are from lower incomes, have books of their own that they can read and reread and cherish. Right. And we'll be talking about your Project Bookshelf. Good. So how did you get involved in this? I know you are a real leader in child advocacy issues, yes. But why children's books?
Well, 2 years ago, in the holiday season of 1988, my husband and I were at a community Christmas party over in North Minneapolis, the program where the Vikings come and hand out gifts and toys and food mostly, and some mittens to children and their families, and they have a big party and food, and it was a wonderful party, and we're helping a couple of families carry all this stuff home to their homes. And I look in the boxes and I say to Peter, there are no books here. And I thought, oh gosh, when people have limited incomes, it's really hard to afford to buy books. You know, I buy books for all the little children in my life, and I sometimes feel like I have to give up food to buy books because they're so expensive these days, and yet they're so wonderful, and the children like them and need them.
But they're often not any more expensive than some of the toys we buy for our children.
That's true, but the programs out there are getting the toys to the families, and yet books they still don't get. So I thought, why don't we try to find a way to collect books? So last year, we got kind of a late start, as these things do when they're a new idea, but the Friends of the Library were very enthusiastic supporters, and a number of other organizations. We had collection points several places around the state, and we invited people who were collecting to also become a partner with a local organization, a Head Start program, a community center that served low-income children, whatever the program was, so that the books would go directly from the collection point to the children. They didn't have to come to St. Paul and be redistributed, that they would be distributed in the community where they were collected. And we collected almost 10,000 books last year in 1989 on very short notice. This year, we started early. We started almost right away after last year. We have corporate support from Target. We have the Friends of the Library again. We have the Minnesota Federation of Teachers, the Minnesota Education Association, and several other organizations, as well as my office, who have made commitments both in financial support for the promotion, but also in just distribution and promoting support among their members. And I'm really excited this year because I feel that we will be much more of a statewide comprehensive project, and I think we're going to more than double the number of books we collect.
I certainly hope so. One of the
Yeah.
things that I thought last year, because the Friends of the Hennepin County Library were involved in collecting, and I looked at some of the books that had been left in the libraries, and you could see the love and the care that those books had been chosen.
Yes.
Some of my favorite classics, for instance, The Secret Garden, a beautiful edition of The Secret Garden, and I visualized some woman who'd loved that as a child,
Yes.
thinking of the delight a child today would get in reading that book. And
Many copies of Goodnight Moon came in. And
there
the
is
Velveteen
every child in
Rabbit.
the world should have Goodnight Moon.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's wonderful.
The other thing about this project is that there are many of these classics like Goodnight Moon, which are now available in paperback. And so people don't have to make a $20 purchase in order to contribute something to the project. It's possible to, when you're buying books for yourself, or if you don't have any children of your own, but you see these books for $4 or $5, it's possible for people to buy a book and contribute to Project Bookshelf. So we will once again have collection spots at many of the libraries around the state. We'll have them at all the Target stores. And Target is, the independent booksellers, of course, are also contributing. And last year, they were the main supporters of this project. They're helping us again, which is wonderful. They're putting collection spots at their cash registers. So when people are buying their own books, they're encouraging them to buy an extra book for Project Bookshelf.
I know some bookstores, I think, for every number of books that were donated, they contributed a book themselves.
Yes, and Target is going to do that this year as well. So we expect to have just a fantastic response, both from the public who will buy and contribute books, as well as our corporate business supporters.
The public-private cooperation. Well,
Yes.
this is a wonderful example, too, of how everybody is beginning to realize that the very youngest children, if they're going to start school, successful by 6,
That's right.
have to have access to books, to
That's
reading,
right.
and books have to be used in the family setting as something wonderful, something fun, and something that everybody in the family can enjoy.
That's right. And the concept of encouraging parents to read to their children, the other project that you have here in Hennepin County Libraries to provide the Bookmobile service to family daycare providers, this is another way to reinforce those habits. We might also use this opportunity to suggest to people who are in organizations that serve these children that if they could make use of books, I mean, if they have children that they would be willing to distribute these books to during the holidays, that they should call our office and let us know that they're a willing recipient.
And that's one thing we'll do at the end of the program. We'll put your office number up
Good.
and even the address of the Capitol so people
Good.
can contact you about that. One of the things that I thought was most positive last year, too, as we gathered books within suburban Hennepin County and decided where we were going to donate them, it established a link with that other organization, which happened to be Veep, and they were very, very excited to get the books because
Right.
it was just at the time that parents were coming in to choose the gifts for the children. And they said, if you've got information about library programs, if you've got information about literacy classes, book lists, anything that you would like us to distribute during the year,
Right.
please contact us. So that was one
That's
network
great.
step that we hadn't
So
had
you-
access to before.
So you benefited
So
by
we benefited
beyond
greatly,
the book
right.
itself. yeah.
And I think they have been very active in collecting materials for children before school starts, underwear and socks and notebooks
Right.
and pencils, but this was another thing that they thought during the year,
Yeah.
if we could focus on this too,
That's
so that
great.
every child before he or she starts school could have a book to take. So it's just,
That's
it
great.
mushrooms out and spreads all kinds of other things in the community.
Well, and we are accepting books. We want new books, of course, in this project because we want people to have their own books. There are a number of programs out there which collect used books, and I think that's valuable and a good thing to do. But in this case, because we want to use these gifts as individual gifts to the children at the holiday time, that we'd like them to be new books. But we're also accepting books for all ages. It's not just little children, it's young teens, adolescents, so that
Sometimes it's, for some of us, more fun to buy books for the little children, those
Sure.
Goodnight Moons, but the real need for older children to have something that's appropriate for their age level.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about how many Nancy Drew books you read as a child?
No, I read the Bobbsey Twins, not Nancy Drew.
I read them all. I mean, it's just great. And I see my friends' children who are just huddled up in the corner reading their version of Nancy Drew. I forget that there's a newer version, of course.
Well, Nancy Drew is still out there, but there are things like Sweet Valley High.
Yes, and some of those. And those are, I mean, we want the children to have those books too. And so kind of wherever you're at, wherever people are at with kids, whichever age is their fancy right now, buy books for that age. It's we can make use of all of them.
I could put in a plug too. If people out there are a little uncertain of what books youngsters are reading today, you can always check with your public librarian, or you could go into a local bookstore and check with the person who's responsible for ordering. And that's a way maybe too for people who see that their particular library or community may not be involved in Project Bookshelf. You could initiate
it's a way
that
to get
contact,
them interested,
get them involved.
in it. Yes.
Because I think it's just ideal. It fits into this whole family literacy.
Perhaps I was just earlier this week, we're in the middle of October here as we're talking about this, I was at the University of Minnesota where they're just opening an exhibition, the Curlin Collection, on architectural images in children's literature. And I was reminded of what a special resource the Curlin Collection is at the University of Minnesota, which a lot of people probably don't even know about.
Wonderful original art and manuscripts, and it's accessible to children and I believe to school groups.
Yes, and the exhibition has mostly original art in it, and one of the pieces is the original art from Goodnight Moon, which was just fantastic. It's from the 30s, I believe. I hadn't remembered that it was such an old book.
Universally beloved.
Yes.
Well, I sort of knew that children's books had arrived when I saw an article about that exhibit in Minnesota Architecture.
Yes.
And usually in the past we've seen things about children's books only in periodicals, especially aimed at either elementary school teachers or children's services librarians. So I think we are coming of age in our society. Great. Well, in addition to all your work with Project Bookshelf, you do a lot of other advocating for children in the state of Minnesota, and I know that you have real serious concerns, and the whole focus of your recent political career has been how to make things better for children in Minnesota, and you've really stepped out and taken a real role in that. What do you see happening in the next few years in Minnesota with children's issues, legislatively particularly, because of your
Well, I would say the good news is that in Minnesota we do have a new public awareness of the need for investing in young children. There is a growing understanding that when 20% of our children are living in poverty, they have working parents who are not making enough money to have that family be other than in poverty, that we have serious problems that are nutrition issues, that are developmental issues, that are learning issues for children, health issues, that's an investment we can't afford not to make, because the neglect of those children has tremendously serious consequences 15, 20 years from now. And those consequences are both economically very expensive, but also socially expensive beyond anything we can currently imagine. And so I feel very confident that on the level of Minnesota, on the micro level here, that we are moving in the right direction. Not fast enough to suit me, but I believe that we have a growing commitment to do the right thing, to invest those resources. I am not as confident about the commitment at the federal level. And I think that we need to develop a public consciousness about that and come to terms with our public outrage about that, because the consequences for our larger society are profound.
Well, an interesting thing happened very recently when a World Summit on Children was held at the United Nations.
Right.
And this is the first time in history that countries all over the world have come together to talk about children's issues.
And in fact, it was the largest attendance of any World Summit on any subject ever in the history of the UN.
I didn't realize that. But the fact that the United States, particularly President Bush, has not signed that Declaration of the Rights of the Child
That's right.
is very, very surprising. And
there were 70 countries represented, 70 plus countries represented at the summit in October of 1990. Over 40 of them have already signed the Rights of Children Declaration. The United States is not one of them. We're holding it up on a couple of what I would call technicalities, and they, quite frankly, outrage me. One of the main ones is that one of the points in the Declaration is that they will not accept capital punishment for children. From my perspective, it's inexcusable that we don't sign that declaration. We are the only developed country in the world that does not have a national child care commitment. We have not been able to pass a child care bill since the 1970s, and when we passed that bill, the president, then Nixon, vetoed it. Right now, again, we're in the middle of a budget crisis at a national level, and the child care bill is once again held hostage to the inability of the Congress to make its other very important decisions. The lack of a national child care effort is a significant problem both in Minnesota and around the country.
I think I've heard you say we have farm policies, we have economic policies,
yep,
but we have no policy relating to children.
Exactly. We don't have a public commitment. We don't have a public statement that says this is what we believe about our children, that our children are the most important. We say it casually, but until we...
And we see it on almost every brochure for any candidate of either party.
That has finally happened. Finally, politically, they're talking about it, but the actions are not there. We talk about a good line, but the commitment to a national child care program, the commitment to national health insurance for children, the commitment to an increase in Head Start. In Minnesota, only 30% of the children who qualify for Head Start are actually in the program. And it's up to 30% because of state money, not because the federal government is paying what they should. The federal government is only paying 23% of the cost of not 23% of the cost, but the federal money is paying for only 23% of the children to be in Head Start, even though we know that Head Start is the program that works. We have studies all over the place. I mean, we know. And we've known it for 20 years, and we still don't do it. There's no other country in the world that would have this much information at its disposal and financial resources and choose to spend them in other places.
So it's a matter of realigning the way tax dollars are spent in the state.
I believe that an investment in our children is the most important national defense issue. I mean, if we must talk in terms of defense, then I think we can't afford to not understand that taking care of our children and educating our children is a national defense and therefore a long-term security issue for this country.
Our children are everyone's responsibility.
That's right.
One of the things that I was interested in recently when I attended the Minnesota Candlelight Vigil, and you spoke there too. You were sort of the lead speaker. We talked briefly with Dr. Ed Ellinger from the Minneapolis Health Department, and he said he is very concerned about the long-term effects of what's happening to children in Minnesota today. Mm-hmm. But he said even more important, he thinks, is enjoying children for what they are as children, and seeing to it that what they have today is comfortable and that they're warm and that they're read to and that they're loved, not for what they can do for us as adults when we're in the nursing homes later on, but for what it means to them now. And I think that's something too that's...
And what it means to us now. Sure. I mean, it's purely selfish. I mean, the opportunity to be with children, to be loved by children, is as rewarding for adults as it is for the children. So I think as a society, both in public policy as well as in private conduct, we all need to think about these issues a little bit more.
Well, in terms of public policy, your office and you in particular have been instrumental in bringing the National Commission on Children to Minnesota.
Yes. And
in late October of 1990, there will be a hearing talking about these sorts of issues.
Yes. It's a commission, the National Commission on Children and Youth, that's chaired by Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia. The commission is a public-private commission. doing many of the same things on a national level that we're trying to do with the Children 2000 Commission here. They have held several hearings, regional hearings around the country. Early in the spring of 1990, I extended the first invitation to them to hold one of the field hearings in Minnesota. We repeated the invitation several times, and we finally won. The final hearing, this is the final hearing that they're holding, will be in Minnesota at the St. Paul Technical College on the 18th of October. We're very excited. 20 members of the commission will be here. Senator Rockefeller will be here. Lieutenant Governor Martha Griffiths, an old friend of children and women of this country, used to be in Congress for 20 years, will be here as a member of the commission. The hearing will be held that afternoon. Testimony will come not only from Minnesotans, but from people in this region, in the Midwest region. So we're kind of hosting it, but it's not just for Minnesota testimony, it's to get testimony from the region. So,
well, the library community will be represented because we feel that
it's great.
We have a particular role to play in solving some of these social issues too, and it has to do with making books and information accessible to people of all ages. But
well, I have to say here, Gretchen, the Hennepin County Libraries have done a terrific job of building partnerships, and I really appreciate it because I think that it's real easy for the public to forget how their tax dollars are used. And it's important to realize that the resources of the library are public resources. In some cases, you've raised extra private dollars for things like the Bookmobile for the child care program, but in general, it's public resources that are working in an activist kind of way, not just to provide library services as we knew them when we were children, but to do it in the way that makes sense for the changing environment. This society is so different, and you really have demonstrated a capacity for responding to those changes that I hope all of Minnesota citizens appreciate, because it is their tax dollars at work in a very productive way.
Thank you very much. And it isn't just Hennepin County, it's Minneapolis Public, it's St. Paul, it's libraries all over the state who are breaking down those stereotypes about what was a traditional service.
Exactly.
And realizing that we can no longer afford to serve just the nice
people who walk in the door.
People who come in the door, but we've got to get out. And
well,
I think
you're all doing a great job, and I'm really grateful for the support the libraries have given in general to this whole issue of literacy and promoting reading, and of course to Project Bookshelf specifically.
That's our bag. We do books, we do information, so your project comes right down along it. Now, you have recently also formed a Commission 2000, which will deal with children's issues. And you have, again, involved the private sector, and the idea is that members of the corporate community will be talking in a very in-depth and serious way about children's issues.
Yes, we have felt for a long time, as we've worked our way through the legislative process trying to expand the public agenda, that one of the missing links in this discussion was the business community, both small business and large business, and that we needed to do some kind of a network in a quasi-official way that would engage those leaders in understanding the issue and helping us articulate a broad public agenda that would build support for what we have to do on a micro level as well as in a broader policy. We're very pleased by the individuals who have agreed to serve. This is an executive order created commission by Governor Perpich, created the commission. Ron James, the CEO of U.S. West Minnesota, serves. Ian Martin from Pillsbury. We have several smaller companies, executives on the board, as well as the labor union community. The Board on Aging has a representative, so we can begin to build some of the intergenerational efforts as well, because the resources we need on this issue are very broad, and we can't afford to limit this to my network or your network or anybody else's individual network.
Maybe a problem with children's issues in the past, long in the past, that we tended to talk only to each other, and we didn't get out there and
it's understandable at the time. I mean, when you're a small underfunded section of the community, the people who serve the children are the most knowledgeable, but they also didn't get much support. And I think finally we're beginning to make children a serious issue, you know, a hard issue as opposed to a soft issue.
Soft, the nice,
yes.
warm, fuzzy kind of thing.
Right.
And some of the things that have come up in terms of child care providers' salaries, the fact that I think there was a recent letter to the editor that said child care providers make less than zookeepers, and are we...
They make less than parking lot attendants.
Which is...
it's profound. And that's why it's so important to carry this discussion to a broader public, because we can't really meet the needs without putting more resources into the child care system. It's not possible. Most child care providers in this state working in child care centers qualify for poverty programs like food stamps and other things because that's how little they make. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
No, and yet they are definitely professionals who work with children, and
Absolutely.
they care very much. But there's a high burnout rate, there's a high turnaround rate, because for many of them they can't make a living.
And there are very
that way.
few benefits and no vacations, and most of us could not survive it.
Not survive
Most
without
of
a
us
coffee
wouldn't
break.
have the stamina to do what they do. It's one of the ways to get people to think about this is to realize that if one is a teacher or an educator, let's say, one makes more money according to the age one teaches. So when one is teaching an adult, one makes the most money. When one is teaching in graduate school, one has the highest salary. When one is teaching a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old, one is making the low end.
You don't get to graduate school if you haven't had a quality education all the way up.
Exactly.
That's...
Plus the fact that when one is an adult, an educated adult, one is in the best position to learn more on one's own. So in fact, one really needs a teacher the least when one is older and better educated already. So it's an interesting way to think about how these dichotomies get locked into our system.
Lieutenant Governor Marlene Johnson, thank you very, very much for being with us today on All About Kids.
It's always a pleasure. I appreciate your support of Project Bookshelf and helping us articulate the broader issues.
Well, good luck with Project Bookshelf.
Thank you.
Check with your local library or bookstore to find out how you can become involved in Project Bookshelf. And thanks to Lieutenant Governor Marlene Johnson for being with us on All About Kids today, and thank you all for joining us. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.